Good morning, sir. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. A very good afternoon to you
Yes.
all.
Good afternoon, Mary.
Good afternoon, sir. Hello, everyone. A very good afternoon to you all. I am Dr. Wanpai Mary K. Chapang, the convener of today's webinar on Worldview of Tribes and Communities of Northeast. On behalf of Philosophy Department, Don Bosco College, Tura, I take the privilege to express my sincere welcome and gratitude to our esteemed speakers, Professor Vanlal Khak, Professor Xavier Pimao, Dr. Prasenjit Biswas, and Dr. Basil Polong from Northeastern Hill University, Shillong. I also welcome the principal and the vice principal of our college, Father Vivan Rodriguez Mukim and Father Avilash Vijay. I also extend my warm welcome to my colleagues, fellow scholars, friends, students, and all the participants from various parts of the world for joining us in this webinar. Before I proceed, I would just like to give a brief introduction about the theme of this webinar. Northeast India represents an opulent diversity of ethnics and communities who affiliate themselves to diverse and distinctive thoughts, religious belief systems, languages, cultures, values, cultures, and traditions. As diverse as their thoughts, cultures, traditions, so also all these tribes and communities have their own different worldviews or have their own different ways of conceptualizing, philosophizing, apprehending, perceiving, and interpreting man, God, nature, reality, and the entire universe as a whole. So today, I would like to say that we are fortunate enough to have these four esteemed speakers who are our very own professors who will further share and deliberate their knowledge on the worldview of tribes and communities of Northeast India. Once again, I welcome you all and happy listening. To begin with, I now request the principal of our college, Father Vivan Rodriguez Mukim, to deliver his inaugural speech.
Thank you, Dr. Wanpai K. Japang. A very good afternoon to everyone. On behalf of Don Bosco College, Tura, I would like to welcome each and every one of you to the national webinar. Now we can call it a global webinar as we have participants all the way from the US, Canada, and other countries on the topic Worldview of Tribes and Communities of Northeast. As I welcome each and every one of you to the webinar, I would like to express my sincere words of thanks to all those who made this webinar possible. I place on record my sincere thanks to the Department of Philosophy, Don Bosco College, Tura. I would like to mention the names of Dr. Wanpai Mary K. Japang, Assistant Professor, Department of Philosophy, and the convener of this webinar. Ms. Priyanki M. Marap, Assistant Professor, Department of Philosophy, Don Bosco College, Tura, and Mr. Ferik Salnang D. Sangma, Assistant Professor, Don Bosco College, Tura, other faculty members of the department, and the faculty members of Don Bosco College, Tura. I place on special records my sincere thanks to the resource persons, Professor Vanlal from the Department of Philosophy, Northeastern Hill University, Shillong, Professor Xavier P. Mao, Department of Philosophy, Northeastern Hill University, Shillong, Dr. Basil Polong, Assistant Professor, Department of Philosophy, Northeastern Hill University, and Dr. Prasenjit Biswas, Associate Professor, Department of Philosophy, Northeastern Hills University, Shillong. Thank you, dear professors and doctors, for accepting to be the resource persons at the global webinar. On a personal note, I would like to say that I have met most of the resource persons personally, and I found them very helpful and very down to earth. Once again, a very big thank you for sharing your expertise with us. I would like to express my sincere thanks to the technical team of the college, Sri John Satish and Sri Javelin A. Sangma, who made all the arrangement for this webinar. To all those who lend their technical support to the webinar, I would like to sincerely thank all of you. Don Bosco College, Tura, is situated in a hill town in the western part of the state of Meghalaya. The college was established by the Salesians of Don Bosco in the year 1987 to serve the cause of higher education for the people of Garo Hills in particular and the Northeast India in general. The college, during the time of the lockdown due to COVID-19, had conducted many webinars and international web conference. And these are all possible with the collaboration and the dedication of the faculty of the college. Going back to the topic, Northeast India is one of the most fascinating places of India and of the world, located at the northeastern region of India and consisting of 8 states, called collectively as the 7 Sisters and a cousin. Much of the region has been left unexplored till date, owing to the region's formidable terrain consisting of mountains, hills, rivers, forests, and predators, and deficiency of infrastructure. This small-sized region has one of the highest biodiversity density found anywhere in the world. Yet, with all these riches and the richness of the region, there are many peoples, even in our country, who has no knowledge about the Northeast. When I was a student, I did my studies mostly in South India, and I heard good things about the Northeast from those who have either visited or read about the Northeast in books and in the internet. But there are many who still have no idea about the Northeast and think that the northeastern part of India is a land infected by forests, headhunters, and malaria. The purpose of this webinar is to understand the beauty of this enchanting wonderland and the people and the tribes of the Northeast. Our ways of living, our style of dressing, our food habits may be different, etc. But we are communities built with warm hearts. I take this opportunity to welcome all of you, particularly the participants who are attending this webinar via Zoom and YouTube link. Thank you for registering for this webinar. Altogether, there are 2,295 participants who have registered for this webinar. This shows that there are many who are interested and wanting to know about the Northeast India. Once again, I welcome all of you, resource persons, the faculty members of Don Bosco College Tura, and all the participants of this webinar. As we take part in this global webinar, may it help us to understand better about the Northeast and the tribes and communities living in Northeast India. Thank you. Have a wonderful learning.
Thank you, Father, for always being there to bolster and motivate us in every academic activity of the department. Now, before we start the session, and before I request the first principal of today's webinar, Professor Vanlal Khak, I would just like to give a brief introduction about him. Professor Vanlal Khak is a professor and head of Philosophy Department, Northeastern Hill University, Shillong. He has authored 3 books. He has presented 40 papers in various conferences and seminars. He has also published around 20 articles on philosophy of culture, philosophy of religion, moral philosophy, and analytic philosophy. So, sir, now I request you to take over.
Professor Banlal, kindly unmute yourself.
Yeah, it is unmuted now. Now it's all right. Yeah. Now it's all right.
Yes, Professor, we can hear you. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Respected Principal Don Bosco College Tura and organizer Dr. Wan Pai Japang and all those participants who are far and near, who are part of this webinar. So good morning to every one of you. My theme today is Worldview of Ma and Mijo. So without taking much time, let me go straight to what I am to speak. At the outset, I must thank Dr. Wang Pai Japang, organizer of this webinar, who was once upon a time my student and now my colleague, for accommodating my last minute request. As per the earlier schedule of this program, my intended topic was issues of identity, but after seeing the theme of the seminar in my allotted space, I thought it will be better for me to speak in a topic which will be directly in line with the theme of the seminar, that is worldview, especially worldview of the Mar and Mijo. One of the biggest problems of the present day society is the effect of overall change and acceleration on human psychology. Neither individual minds nor collective culture seems able to cope with the unpredictable change and growing complexity. Stress, uncertainty, and frustration increase. Minds are overloaded with information, knowledge fragments, value erode, negative development are consistently overemphasized, while positive ones are ignored. The resulting climate is one of nihilism, anxiety, and despair. While the wisdom gathered in the past has lost much of its validity, we don't have a clear vision of the future either. As a result, there does not seem to be anything left to guide our action. What we need to is framework that tie everything together, allow to understand society, the world, and our place in it. And that could help us to make the critical decision which will shape our future. It would synthesize the wisdom gathered in the different specific disciplines, philosophies, and religion, rather than focusing on small section of reality. It would provide us with a picture of the whole. In particular, it would help us to understand and therefore cope with complexity and change. Such a conceptual framework may be called worldview. What is a worldview? A worldview constitutes an overall perspective on life that sum up what we know about the world, how we evaluate it emotionally, and how we respond to it volitionally. A worldview is a view of the world used for living in the world. A worldview is a mental model of reality, a comprehensive framework of ideas and attitudes about the world, ourselves, and life, a system of belief, a system of personally customized theories about the world and how it works, with answer for a wide range of questions. What are humans? Why we are here and what is our purpose in life? What are your goals for life? When you make decision about using time, it's the stuff life is made of. What are your values and priorities, including that? We'll look at these questions and others, plus a practical application. How do worldview affect decision and action in everyday life for individuals and societies? And what we teach students about worldview and how and why. How can we actualize our worldview? So worldview one is the way we actually view the world because it's the dominant influence shaping our decision and action when we are living in the world. A person's worldview is affected by many factors, by their inherited characteristics, background experiences, and
Hello.
life situation,
Hello, sir.
attitude and habits they have developed, and more.
Hello,
And
sir.
this vary from one person to another.
Sir, I request, excuse me,
Yes.
sir. Sorry, sir, for
Huh?
interrupting. Sorry for interrupting, sir, but
You cannot hear.
I request you, sir, to speak a little bit louder.
Yeah, I'm speaking very loud. Anyway,
Sorry,
I
sir.
will try.
Thank you, sir.
So, Carol Hill said, let me quote, by worldview, I mean the basic ways of interpreting things and events that pervade a culture so thoroughly that it becomes a cultural concept of reality. What is good? What is important? What is sacred? What is real? Worldview is more than culture, even though the distinction between the two can sometimes be subtle. It extends to perception of time and space, of happiness and well-being, the belief, values, and behaviors of a culture stem directly from its worldview. Unquote. A worldview provides a model of the world which guides its adherent in the world, with the realization that many subtleties can be added. This will be our working definition. Some key component of worldview, I will not explain further, but I'll just give view of human nature, view of the good life, equality with others, responsibilities to others, relationship between the individual and the state, government and society, relationship of human with nature, sources of ethical wisdom. Now let me come to the main theme. There is Mark and Mizo worldview. The Mar and Mizo share many cultural items in common, although they are not one and the same. This is clearly seen in their concept of worldview. My objective in this paper is to explain their concept of worldview, and therefore I am not going to discuss their similarity and differences. Rather, assuming that there are more similarity than differences, and also whenever emphasis and examples are given and cited is based on Mar. Relationships are very important and are the center of Mar and Mizo worldview. The harmonious balance of the community is crucial, important. Relationships include the living, the unborn, the dead, and the spiritual world. The marriage relationship. Number one, marriage is viewed as the perpetuation of the family. The husband usually choose the women and pay a bride to her parents. Therefore, in-laws are at most important. Women are viewed as an important economic asset in addition to her value as a child bearer. There is no place in tribal society for unmarried women of marriageable age. Oftentimes, women are considered complete person only when they are married and have procreation. Children, especially sons, are the focal point of the marriage and are viewed as pillar of social security. The community relationship. Tribal people are community oriented. Individuals are only important in the context of the group. To break community relationship is considered sin. Good and evil are generally judged by a very simple rule, that is, whether or not the behavior in the question does harm to the well-being of the community or threaten its members' health. Community peace and harmony are highly sought after. Dissension within group is to be strictly avoided. Argument between two people is not a private matter. Such as argument could potentially shatter the bonds that hold things together, so it becomes the business of everyone in the village. Controversial topics are dealt with in the parables and stories so as to avoid direct confrontation. Decision making is by consensus. Mutual agreement is achieved through a lengthy of communal discussion. This meeting will often last until consensus is reached so that no dissension occurs. Success, identity, and well-being are largely dependent upon how in tune one is with his community. Individual competition are not encouraged to prevent hard feeling and jealousies. Traditional justice systems are more concerned with restoring harmony than determining who is right or wrong in a dispute. Refusal to restore relationship may cause a person to be rejected by the community. This isolation punishment is usually more than the offender can endure, so that he quickly comes in to live again. The most terrible punishment that can be inflicted on anyone is to be excommunicated from the community or tribe. The elderly persons are greatly respected. Time and space. According to the tribal people, life is event oriented rather than time oriented. Time is not measured by minutes and hours, but by the significance of event. Therefore, starting and finishing time for meeting are not important. This is to say, time is subservient to event, which in turn are subservient to relationship. Number two, space is not measured in terms of acres or miles, but by familiar landmarks such as river, trees, valleys, mountain, etc. Many places are considered sacred due to the residence of spirit or other superhuman beings. The sacred space is subservient to the relationship with that ancestor or spirit, and it is not to be discredited. Personal property and prestige. Acquiring personal possession is not a priority. All possessions are shared back and forth within the community. Money is priced for the prestige value it can bring to the tribe. Rarely would large amount of money be spent for a purely personal item because there would be expectation that the item be shared within the community. Personal prestige for the sake of the community is highly desired by men. This can be acquired by age, generosity, hard work, and ability with magic, knowledge of myths and legend. These are the things that make a man leader. Privacy. Personal privacy is thought of only in trance and is not a high priority. House of relatives are entered freely and without formality. Animistic in their spiritual view of the world and of life. Most often, tribal do not have a concrete monotheistic belief in God. Their immediate concern is to keep the spirits happy. Therefore, animism is power conscious and power seeking. The religion of animism focuses on an awesome awareness that the spirit will influence all of life. Enemies believe that an impersonal supernatural power or influence is present within inanimate objects. This power is almost universal, which can be possessed by individual to use in manipulating spiritual forces to achieve goal. All behavior is influenced by the spirit world. Most often, tribal do not have a concrete monotheistic that staying as of today also in the traditional tribal religion. So the cause of event can be known through contact with the spirit, and once known, it is then possible to control or elude the dreaded event through rituals. All life is dependent upon the correct use of rituals. This applies to common life. Occurrences such as gardening, hunting, fishing, gambling, trading, love making, child development, fertility of wife, discovering of the cause, trouble or death, house building, etc. Human effort is of little benefit if the help of spirit is not guaranteed through ritual. Any failure to achieve the desired result through ritual is always attributed to the incorrect use of ritual by human, rather a failure of the spirit. Spirit communicate with human through omens, possession states, dreams, and vision. Tribal people are tormented by phobia. The spirit of fear completely dominates tribal culture. But of course, with the modern development in many fields, even all those things are also coming to an end even in tribal society today. So thank you once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for such a wonderful and enlightening lecture. Sir, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Sir, thank you very much, sir, for such a wonderful and enlightening lecture. And I am very sorry for interrupting in between. Now, sir, we have some questions from the participants. We have some questions from the participants. So, sir, I would like you to answer to some of them. Now, I request Sir Ferik Salnangdi Sangma to raise the question to sir.
Shouting from the top of the voice. We cannot hear you.
No, it will come. One point, please ensure that the voice is not.
Sir Ferik, are you there?
Hello, can you hear on five?
Yes, sir. Hello.
Yeah. This question is not hard by us.
Hello.
Yes,
You mean?
now it is audible.
Questioner could
Yeah.
not speak properly.
Hello.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
Yes, hello, ma'am.
Yes.
Thank you so much, sir, Professor Banalgaka, for this wonderful session that you had given for us. And now there are not there. We don't have any such questions right now. So I hand over this time to Dr. Wanpai again. You can take over this time. Thank you.
Okay. So I will just like to make one important announcement to all the participants. Now, any participants who have the questions for the respective speakers, you could post your question in the comment chat box. I repeat, any participant who want to post the question to any respective speaker can post the question in the comment chat box. So now we move on to the next speaker, the second speaker of today's webinar, Professor Xavier Pimao. But before I request him to take over, I will just like to make a brief introduction. Professor Xavier Pimao is a professor in the Department of Philosophy, Northeastern Hill University, Shillong. His areas of specialization include existentialism and ethics. He is the author of the book Virtue and Morality. He has papers in more than 20 edited books. He has more than 25 articles in both national and international journals. He has also presented papers and delivered many lectures in India and other countries as well. Now I request Professor Xavier Mao to take over. Welcome, sir. Sir, we cannot hear you. Sir, please unmute yourself.
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. Okay, good. Right. Good afternoon, everyone. Respected Principal Bivan Mokim, Vice Principal Dr. Wanpai Mary K. Japang, the coordinator or convener of the webinar, other faculties and students from the Don Bosco College, Tura, international participants, national participants, my colleagues. My topic is ethical thoughts and ideas in Mau Naga culture and exploration. So this will be basically dealing with roughly about 10 Naga tribes, which are very, very close and similar, and they are also known as Tenime. The other Naga tribes are slightly different, though similar. I have interviewed a lot of knowledgeable elders, and from my own close observation of the practices, I have jotted down from them, not from any book. It is purely from interview and the observation from the daily practices and the saying. In my stray reflection on the sources of ethical thinking in the Mau Naga culture, I find that there are no systematic ethical system like Western ethic. What I find is that there is ethical thinking in the form of aphorism like Rachatobo Kopho, which means upholding of righteousness and integrity. Rashashakopho, which means upholding the path of God's blessing. Kamakokhi Kapi, upholding of forgiveness. Traditionally, even Zikr Amani, Amaketiko, which means be like the stability and crystal clear water. So traditionally, any willful slanderer or any other criminal offender is repentant and genuinely asks for forgiveness with traditionally brewed liquor filled in a gourd and a fowl accompanied by other relatives go to the house and offer them to the offended one. So with that, the offender is usually forgiven. Okay, ora ome kalina dinoy, which means upholding the brotherhood of tiger, spirit, and human, which means the oneness, the holistic understanding of the cosmos, including God is the brother or sister of a human being and animals. They are all brothers and sisters. Negatively, the word chinoi, which means prohibition, has very wide application, though there is no exact English equivalent. Moro nato and shu anagi nepo omo so chinoi, which means orphan and differently disabled person should never be looked down upon. Prodzkapi, spearing at the bundle of grass. This ceremony which is performed once in a year, usually during Trijini festival, that is in the month of June. The bunch of grass represents the effigies of a criminal or even potential criminal. All the men folk come to a particular place and shout and curse loudly while throwing two pointed sticks like spears at the bunch of grass, by cursing at all the criminals that they be condemned to live short and miserable life. That is a kind of such pronouncement, and everybody will assemble there and they will spear. This exercise acts as a warning and ill wishes for all potential and actual criminals to restrain and reform themselves. That is the clear message to them. Osaka Oso, letting a cat starve and die in a cage. An individual will carry a cat in a bamboo matted cage tied to a pole, accompanied by 2 or 3 individuals, going to as many villages as possible, including the whole Angami, Chakasan, Pomoy area and other Naga villages, proclaiming that any criminal, whether thief or murderer or any evildoer, will meet like the fate of the cat, which is miserably mewing and finally die of starvation. So they will meet similar fate. That is the warning message. They go round and round to different villages. Ichehe kovu kena raho ye ushu sekomomu yi kovu kapi. This means giving protection to those birds, insects, animals, and strangers if they come to one's house. Though traditionally Nagas eat all types of animals, all types of birds and insects, and indulging even in the head hunting warfare, but despite this, whenever any bird come to your house or any insect fly into your house, you are not supposed to kill them. And if any stranger come to your house, then also you are supposed to welcome him or her with warm hospitality. That is the meaning. It is morally obligatory to give them shelter and take care of them. Any external or open property like a stack of firewood, in those days no gas, etc. So firewood was common, or any fruit from a tree or from any plant from the garden is ideally protected from any potential thief if it is put with a bunch of grass, tied to a stick planted either to the ground or along with the protected property. So thieves usually come even inside the house and steal, but traditionally the Nagas keep things outside their houses and normally people don't take them. In the past, the traditional houses do not have lock and key on the door, but if the door is closed with 2 sticks crossed with each other, with the help of rope closely tied to the sticks, then the thief or anybody is not supposed to enter that house in the absence of the owner. Till today, food grains and other materials are kept in the small huts near the paddy field or garden far away from the human population. Usually it is safe, so you can keep anywhere your paddy, even outside the house. Usually nobody will take, not to speak of inside your house. This clearly shows the high level of honesty for whatever the reason may be. From the above aphorism and practices, it is argued that there are no substantive or quintessential or essentialist kind of ethical theory among the Naga people, which is regarded as good by many thinkers, like even the great contemporary philosopher Jürgen Habermas. It is in this trajectory that I shall discern and delineate ethical ideas, thoughts, and sources from the daily practices and sayings of the people. The sense of forgiveness and moderation are the ideals emphasized by the elders of the society. In any civil or criminal dispute, the guiding principle and forgiveness and moderation between the individuals or groups. Even in the midst of pitched battle between two parties, particularly in the past, not these days, two warring parties will be having shields and spears and dowels and big knives, and they will be in a ready position to spear with each other and to cut each other. In that position, if women folk come in between with branches of trees or plant, the fight is supposed to stop. Diplomatic peace treaties are common among the different villages, especially inter-tribal communities. Capital punishment is practically unheard of for any criminal. Instead, banishment for 7 years from the village is resorted to in case of homicide or any grievous crime or offense. The treatment usually given to the worst enemy, hero, warrior, during the so-called headhunting warfare days is to cut up the body into pieces, and every male member of the village is to carry the piece to one's village. In my reflections and analysis of the ethical ideas embodied in the oral text and the manifestation of those ethical ideas in actual practice in specific contexts, I find a schism between the two like any other human society. The idea of evoking good behavior by starving the cat in a cage is not acceptable to me and perhaps for any animal lover. The end is good, but the means employed to achieve moral good is immoral. The other ethical thoughts and practices are perhaps much better than many so-called ancient civilized ethical systems like the Roman crucifixion of criminals or the British system of hanging to death of criminals. Any complicated dispute is easily resolved through serious swearing performance in front of many witnesses. There is no court, etc. in the past. They don't have court, modern court. Therefore, in the place of that, they have this swearing performance ceremony. The content of the swearing consists roughly like either of the contending party should be crushed to death by the huge slip or crack of the earth if the performer of the swearing is guilty. Depending upon the gravity of the case, equal number of people from both the parties will be included in the list of the wished death by the whooping crack of the earth, though it is firmly believed that either death or some serious bad omen would befall upon the guilty party or person, but a rationalist may consider it as a superstitious belief, though it may be effective or efficacious, but this is a superstitious belief. Even today, such swearing is practiced, and people who are guilty generally fear to perform this. In this, there is no scientific causal link between false swearing and the death or bad omen befalling upon the guilty party. Perhaps psychologically, due to the guilty feeling of the party concerned, as a matter of fact, some sort of curse or misfortune happened to come upon the guilty party. Perhaps some rationalists may further argue that this is a chance coincidence. Such false swearing does not have any other effect other than earning bad reputation from the villagers and psychological torment due to the secret or open talk of the witnesses, which is passed on by the witnesses to the other villagers. Since in each village almost everyone is known to each other, the habitual liar or offender can be suspected to be known to others. In this instant case, even superstitious belief has some practical value. Thereby, swearing is very efficacious in maintaining moral order. Since childhood, children are taught to be truthful and righteous for healthy and prosperous living. Perhaps it is one of the reasons why many non-Naga scholars who know the Naga society well remark that the morality of the Nagas is much higher than their counterpart plain people from the mainland India or others. For example, rape is a very rare phenomenon in Naga society, and this can be testified even from the National Crime Bureau statistic that even Naga state has the least in this respect. Just as murder or homicide is also very, very rare, like the rape case, due to some of this aphoristic saying and the practices in the Naga society, particularly the Denime society, the homeostasis is upheld. So I think these are some of my stray reflections and thoughts. It is up to you to give your comments and questions. Thank you all. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you very much, sir, for such an informative and interesting lecture. Now, I would like and you too, sir. So we will just like to take some questions. And now, sir, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, we have some questions for Sir Vanlal and you, sir. Now I request Sir Ferik Salnang to raise some question, to take up some question to the speakers.
Right. Thank you.
Sir Ferik, can you hear me?
Yes. Audible.
Yes.
Yes,
Can you
yes,
hear
I
me?
can hear you.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yes. Thank you so much, Professor Mao, for this wonderful session. There is some questions for you. This was questioned by Ganesh Tungar. What is the role of UNO in the world tribes? What is the role of UNO in the world tribes? This question refers to Professor Mao.
What is the role of the youth?
UNO in the world tribes.
world tribe.
Yes, sir.
So actually,
Well,
it's Mao. It's Mao.
yeah,
So
yeah,
what is the role of the Mao of Mao?
yeah.
Could you please repeat the question? So
Yeah,
Ferric,
please,
please repeat the question.
please repeat the question. Not very clear.
What is the role of UNO in world tribes?
UNO. Sir,
Yes,
what is the role
Okay.
of the UNO in?
world tribes.
So what is the role of the UNO in world tribes?
Okay.
Yes,
Well,
sir.
I think the question is not directly related to my topic. And also, I'm sorry, the question is not very clear. What is the role of the UN in the world tribes, you mean? It's not really very clear. I'm very sorry. The role of the UN in the world tribes, is it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You mean to say, what is the role of the UN on the various tribes of the world? Is it that you mean?
Yes, sir. We can proceed to
Okay,
other
okay,
question.
okay, let me answer that, if that is so. Well, the United Nations, by setting up its various subcommittees, like various like Asian Indigenous Pact or World Indigenous Forum. Some of such forums are being encouraged in order to protect, to preserve, and to find out some of the important values which are there among the various indigenous tribes of the world. Just as we are very concerned with the disappearance of the species, animal species and plant species, in the same way, the various tribes, some of them have very good cultural values, even moral values, even ethical thought. And unless the United Nations protect them and allow them and encourage them to discover and to discern those values, even those values may disappear. So the role of the United Nations is by observing every year the indigenous people's year, and by setting up certain committees to preserve and to do serious studies on their languages and their culture, because even a lot of the indigenous people, the tribes, languages are also disappearing very, very fast. And if the languages disappear, then along with the language, even the culture will also disappear, because language is the soul of culture. So that is the role of the United Nations. Now, United Nations is playing very, very active role, how to preserve their languages. Okay? So you can pose your next question.
Yes, thank you so much, sir, for this reply for this Mr. Ganesh Tungar. Hope so you had got your answer. Now this question is for Professor Banlalgaka. Now this question is for Professor Banlalgaka. What makes us Mar, and also what makes us Mizo? What makes us Mar, and also what makes us Mizo? This question is by Stephen Ralte for Professor Banlalgaka. Now you can switch on your this one. Now you can unmute, Sir Banlalgaka.
We are trying. Now, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
See, if we are to talk about this cultural identity and markers of cultural identity might have some sort of indication about where Mar is Mar, what makes up Mar, what makes up Mijo. But to be able to do that, it might be very long. But the shortest possible answer to give in this connection is that you see, because of the language and certain specific culture that they have followed, that is the reason why they are identifying as a group called Mar, called Mizo. All right.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Professor Khak, for your reply. Hope this, Mr. Stephen Walte, your submission with that reply. Now, the next question is by Mr. Pradeep Kumar. What are the development of the tribal program? Yeah, it's even Professor Banalka or even Professor Mao can answer this question. What are the development of tribal program?
Well, okay, let me answer this. Even this is also not directly related to my paper. It's a broad question. Nonetheless, I will answer. There is no specific program for the development of the tribes. Though ideally speaking, or as a policy of the government should encourage for the development of the various languages of the tribe. It's very, very important. Unless their languages are developed and also development of the scripts, along with the development of their languages, some of the disappearing or dying elements of culture can be revived. Through logical reconstruction, some of the values and even some of the important elements can be recovered. So the government has to encourage the development of the culture, and education has to be there. Education has to be encouraged. In the Northeast, education is more or less okay, but in a lot of the other tribal area, since the question is a very broad one on the tribe, various other tribes, they do not have proper education at all. So here the government has to pay a very special attention for the development of the tribal area. In the Northeast, it is relatively a much better position, in a much better position. And even the languages are now on the move towards the development of their own oral literature and written literature. Yeah,
Well,
thank you.
Well, in addition to what Professor Mao had said, I'll just add one point. That is, you see, language is very important. He is right in saying, but now new education policy is just introduced, and we have not really used it so far. But then one of the new thing that has come along this line is that up to certain standard, all the tribal community will be able to study in their own languages. So I think that might be one step in which the tribal development can take place, because education, Professor Mao is right, education is a very major factor which will be responsible for developing the tribal people wherever they are. I think, of course, now it is too immature at this stage whether it is really a good thing or not, but at least one aspect which can be looked and studied thoroughly. That is one thing which I would like just to add.
Thank you, Professor Mao and Professor Banalaka, for your reply. Uh, there is one more question for Professor Banalaka by Mr. Jeffrey Dickar. And the question is like this: why women is considered of less or no value before her marriage? Why not give the same status to both men and women in the same society? Can you hear my question, sir? Why
Yes, it
women?
is clear. Hello,
Hello, you can proceed, sir. Then.
hello.
Hello. Yes, you can proceed then, sir.
Hello.
This question is raised by Mr. Jeffrey Dekar. You can
Uh,
reply now. So the question is
Hello.
like this.
Okay.
Hello.
Here.
Yes. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. See, depending upon the kind of cultural situation one is located, I am not saying the Marmijo committee or community regarded women inferior to that. But then one of the very important aspect which, hello,
Yeah, yeah. Go on.
which they emphasize is that if a girl reach marriageable age and remain unmarried, then the value of being a woman is not complete. So to complete the value of women, she had to bear a child. That is what they say. But that doesn't imply that they are inferior to men. No. But one of the most important aspect to be a woman is to procreate. That part they emphasize. Might be sometimes they are overemphasizing one aspect and ignoring about that. But in the Marmijo community, male, women, they are more or less equal, except inheritance property. Otherwise, they are one and the same.
All right. Thank you so much, sir, for your reply. Now we'll go to the another session, which will be taken up by Dr. Bashal Folong. Let me just give some brief introduction about our next speaker. Sir Dr. Bashal Folong is an assistant professor in the Department of Philosophy, Northeastern Hill University, Shillong. He is the author of the book Culture and Religion. He has presented many papers in different conferences and seminars, and he has also published many articles on philosophy of religion, philosophy of culture, philosophical anthropology, and environmental ethics. Now, I hand over the time to our dear Dr. Basil Folong. You can take your time.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Hello.
Hello.
Am I on?
Sir, it's
Am I audible?
sir, it's quite far. Your voice is quite far.
No.
Okay, okay. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. So, good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I'd like to express my gratitude to the organizer and especially Dr. Van Phai Meri Japang, the coordinator and the principal of Don Bosco Tura College, and to all the faculties and students of this college. It is indeed a great pleasure to be here in this webinar to share my thoughts on some pertinent issues relating to this topic called tribal worldview. Before I speak about the worldview from the Khasi perspective, let me briefly draw your attention to what we understand by this term tribe. Tribe indicates an indigenous group of people having its own culture, which we usually call tribal culture. Now, as a community or as a group of people, they have their distinctive ways of perceiving, conceiving, evaluating the world, and also in understanding their relationship with the world. It thereby points to a kind of a system for conceptualizing and articulating. This is what we understand as a worldview. Worldview, as we know, has its root from the German Weltanschauung, which means a system of thought or an overall perspective on life, encompassing the way a person perceives the world, evaluates, and responds to it. A worldview thus refers to a system or a structure through which a particular group or a community view the world around and responds to it. In this way, a worldview is a way in which people characteristically looked outward upon the universe. So in this manner, worldview designates the kind of a conceptual framework or a system in which a particular group is having in order to make itself and the world around intelligible. So therefore, it is an attempt to make sense of life experience that might be otherwise construed as chaotic or sometimes unintelligible. Hence, a worldview is a part of a cultural system through which a community or a group articulates the various aspects of culture, like human relationships with the world, human relationship with each other, human relationship with the Creator, the meaning of life, human destiny, and so on and so forth. Hence, worldview is a judgment of the surrounding world and human place in it. It is, hello? Yeah. It is explainable in terms of human conception of himself, herself, of the world around, of human relationships, fellow ones, with non-humans, and with everything around. Therefore, the concepts which are crucial in the constitution of a worldview. Am I audible? Yeah. Okay. The concepts which are crucial in the constitution of worldview would be concepts such as human life, human destiny, concepts of God, concept of nature, concept of man-nature relationship, and so on. Such concepts may not have an exactly the same meaning as used and perceived by the larger Western tradition. Now, coming to tribal worldview, it can be described as a framework through which a tribe perceives, interprets, conceptualizes the realities around and responds to realities. It is like a mirror which reflects the tribe's potentiality or systematic account of the world and human relationship with the world. Tribal worldview exhibits a structure with many layers, though these layers are closely intertwined. Many scholars attributed layers or levels to worldview, like philosophical, theological level, scientific empirical level, social cultural levels, etc. These levels are sometimes interrelated, and it can be mentioned that these levels are not explicitly manifested in tribal world. The three overlap with each other. For example, religious life is not separated from the moral life or the social life, and moral life is not separated from nature and from the creator. So that is why one of the characteristics of the tribal culture is that there is a unity between God, man, and nature. Now, coming to conceptualizing tribal worldview, it can be mentioned that some psychologists are of the opinion that conceptualizing worldview has to be grounded in philosophy. They argue that cultural phenomenon like worldview could be best captured through the deep structure of culture. Hence, their argument is that conceptualizing a worldview is organized into several philosophical constructs or doctrines like ontology, epistemology, cosmology, axiology, and teleology. So in this context, certain potential questions are provided that could be used to gain insight into the person's worldview orientation. Some of these questions are like, what is the origin of the universe? Or how was nature created? What could be accepted as truth? How is knowledge obtained and transmitted? What is the nature of reality? What is the purpose of life? What can be used to guide human life? Now, these questions are related to how humans try to understand the world and how they relate to human existence. So therefore, conceptualizing worldview involves inquiring into all this. However, such concepts might not be directly available to most tribes, but the questions raised pertain to these concepts. Now, I come to the problem of tribal worldview. Tribes of Northeast India, in particular, originally did not have written literature. So therefore, most of their ideas, thoughts, moral principles, and so on are stored in some forms of oral traditions through stories, folk tales, parables, etc. Now, folk tales are an integral part of most of tribal societies. They usually relate to and elucidate the various cultural aspects of the society from which they evolve. The function and value of folk tales cannot be ignored as a genre of oral tradition. They serve as means for communicating and for imparting wisdoms or religious, morals, and social ideologies. Symbols, for example, are used in theology, in ethnology, in order to communicate the truths which are otherwise hidden to us, or the ordinary language cannot explain or communicate. So in a similar manner, folk tales and other forms of oral tradition acts as a means for communicating, for inculcating, and also for preserving the various cultural values and ideologies. So that is why, since all these are embedded into some forms of oral tradition, thereby analysis and interpretation of folk tales, parables, etc., is an integral part of this tribal study. And it can be argued here that the embeddedness of the tribal worldview makes it more complex and thereby makes our study more difficult. So therefore, one of the problems that the tribal worldview has, which has created some problems for understanding it, is its embeddedness, which is not given directly in its proper form. So therefore, in order to understand or to study tribal worldview, proper investigation like analysis and interpretation needs to be carried out. Now coming to the Khasi perspective. Now Khasi, as we all know, is one of the tribes in Meghalaya having its own specific culture. One of the most important features of the Khasi culture is the centrality of creation, where everything is created and belong to God. Hence, everything has to be understood in the perspective of creation. Further, it can be mentioned that the idea of space is very relevant in Khasi context, because for the Khasis, every event and decision takes place in space. Now, the space in which Khasis lived, along with other creatures, designates that kind of a created thing in which everything else is accommodated. Now, the whole idea of the Kaperte Kamarian designates a space in which everything is located. Here I will refer to the parable of Kakrem Lamet Krem Latang in order to understand more about the intricacies of the Khasi worldview. It may be mentioned that Khasis have varieties of folk tales and folklores which contain messages for the people to learn. This message can have wider implications on the various aspects of the life of the people. Now the story goes like this. There was a dance festival where all living creatures were expected to participate. The dance continued for the whole day. Towards the end of the day, there arrived the sun and the moon, brother and sister. The two danced together, and this has resulted into great uproar of scornful laughter, where the sister and brother danced together. There was really nothing wrong with the dance, but there was laughter of insult, condemning such act as immoral and sinful. But this is so because sin has entered into the heart of mankind. Now overcome by shame and anger for such disrespect act, the son fled away and went to hide herself into the cave called Kakrem Lamet Kakrem Latan. Immediately, there was complete darkness in the entire area. As a result, there was total chaos and confusion. And creatures were dismayed and worried that they could not do any normal duty. Therefore, the whole creature wanted the son back. So on the advice of God, the meeting was called, and the situation was placed in the meeting where all other living creatures known as Lipogentile were also invited. See, ultimately, the Dorbar, which comprises of the Lipogentile, came out with some solution, and they could once again bring back the son. It may be mentioned that this parable has many significances which needs to be explored in order to understand Khasi worldview. This parable provides a kind of a medium for people to see and feel the need for the collective understanding of life, both personally as well as collectively. Moreover, this parable indicates the fact that the life and interests of other creatures are equally important. Therefore, I would like to dwell mostly on the significance of Kadorbar and the Lipogentile. Now, it is interesting to note that the Khasi uses this term Lipogentile to designate all other living creatures. So therefore, here I would like to dwell on the significance of the Dorbar and the concept of the Lipogentile. Now it can be mentioned that after the sun left, the state of nature was that of confusion and the loss of morality. The sun, according to some Khasi scholars, symbolizes righteousness. So therefore, there was a complete chaos and confusion. There was fear and anxiety in everybody's mind that nobody knows what to do. Such was the state of nature that there was no respect for each other, there was no respect for the rights and values of each other. The state of nature, as visualized by Ujespilsiem in Katme Unyotrep, indicates the withering away of the social order and the collapse of the social life, which fails to respect the right and dignity of others, including humans and non-humans. It is also indicates the loss of respect for the society. Now the situation visualizes the rise of social crisis as well as environmental crisis, which endanger the life and survival of all living organisms. The crisis has resulted into both social crisis as well as environmental crisis. Therefore, in order to find out a solution to this, a Dorbar is called, which includes all the other living creatures. Such solution should take into account the interests and concern of all. That is why the interests of both humans and non-humans has to be considered. Now, one of the problems which has affected both the human and the non-human is the environmental problem. The environmental problem which has resulted due to the disappearance of the sun has been a major concern for the entire biotic community. So therefore, the significance of the Dorbar with Kilaipo Gentao, therefore, is indicative of the fact that we need to evolve a proper framework whereby we can take into account the interests of both humans and non-humans. Such system or framework is meant to resolve the issues in which both the human and the non-human are facing, thereby having a larger impact on the biotic community. So therefore, the significance of this Dorbar actually is to evolve a proper framework which involves the change in our perception, change in our attitude, from being anthropocentric to non-anthropocentric, from being selfish and arrogant to being friendly and care for others. Change is something which is inevitable. Therefore, the significance of this Dorbar designates the kind of a change which can be envisaged while addressing the larger issue faced by the biotic community. So therefore, in my opinion, the significance of the Dorbar with the lipogental is indicative of that kind of a framework in which Khasi society needs to evolve in order to take care or in order to resolve this larger issue of environmental crisis. Therefore, it is my humble submission that telling and retelling this tale or this parable is a reminder to the Khasi people of the responsibility and the duty that every one of us has towards our fellow human beings, as well as to the entire biotic community. Thank you very much. Hello.
Now it's coming.
Hello.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for such
Okay.
an excellent presentation and deliberation. Now I request Sir Ferik Sanang
Thank
Distama to take some questions. Sir Ferik.
Right. All right, thank you, ma'am, for this time. Now, there is a question for Professor Folom from Vivekar. He said like this: there is a thought that Sanskrit is pushed in the mind of young people, and he's asking for your opinion, Sir Folom. Can you hear me, sir?
Please
Can you
repeat
hear
the
me, sir?
question. You repeat the question.
The question is like this. There is the thought that Sanskrit is pushed in the mind of young people. And he's asking for your opinion, sir. Sir Polong.
I think so.
Yes.
Hello.
Sir Polong. Yeah.
We lost the connection.
Yeah. Sir Polong is not in the line. Huh? He's not in the line. Sir Polong.
You will be joining soon.
Hello.
Oh, the host muted everyone.
Yeah. Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? So
Yes.
you're not visible, Sir Polong.
Not visible.
Yeah.
I'm very much visible.
So your video is out.
Your video.
Yeah.
So, sir, Sir Folong, the question is for you that from Vivekar. He said like this: there is a thought that Sanskrit is pushed in the mind of young people, and he's asking your opinion. The question is like this: there is a thought that Sanskrit is pushed in the mind of young people, and he's asking for your opinion here.
Sorry, Sanskrit.
Yes, Sanskrit is pushed in the mind of young people.
I So now you say, is it? Yeah. Say. Hello, hello.
Yes. Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you, sir. We can hear you. Yes, we can hear you, sir. All right. Then there's a question for Professor Mao. The question, there's a question from this for Professor Folong again from Ronish Emara. Sir, in tribal society, there are many intermarriages, I think. In the long run.
Hello. Sir Ferric,
Yes.
you please wait.
Yes, what is my question? What is the question addressed to me, please?
Is it to Sir Mao?
This is for Sir Folong again.
So you please wait for Sir Polo.
Should I answer on behalf of Polo?
Yes, sir, you can.
Well, the first one is anything which is forced on anybody is not good. If Sanskrit is forced to the minds of young people, this is not good. But learning any language is always good. But anything which is imposed is bad. It will have a counterproductive effect. It will have reverse effect.
Hello. Hello.
Yeah.
Am I audible now?
Yes, yes, sir, Folong, you can add up if you want to add up something.
Okay. Okay, let me also add something to what Professor Mao has said. The question is something. Yes.
So we cannot.
Sanskrit. Can you hear me?
Not so much, sir.
Difficult, huh?
Thank you. Audible, not audible.
It's not audible. Hello?
Oh, down. Let me see. Hello. Hello. Yeah, listen. Now ask.
Okay,
Hello.
if he's not audible,
yes,
let me answer the question addressed to me.
Yeah.
If I am audible to you, let me answer the question addressed to me. What is the question to me, please?
All right, then. This question is for Professor Mao again. What needs to be more bolstered or strengthened to forbid the devastating situation of culture and custom of northeastern states? It's from Benibert Manda Sangma for Professor Mao. What needs to be more bolstered or strengthened to forbid the devastating situation of culture and custom of northeastern states?
Okay. In other words, how to strengthen the culture or custom? Well, one has to think seriously whether the custom is good for one society or not. Not necessary that all custom or cultures are good. All the custom which are good should be preserved and which are harmful should be abandoned. For example, many Northeast tribes used to indulge in headhunting warfare, which is not good. Therefore, we have abandoned. Similarly, many other harmful customs should be abandoned. But to do that, a quality education has to be there. If quality education is there, if serious thinking people are there, then the good aspects of culture or the good custom can be preserved and the bad custom can be rejected. So is that okay?
Yes, sir. It's okay. Thank you so much for your reply. Now there is one more question for Sir Polong. Sir,
Okay.
can you hear me? Yeah. So the
Oh,
question
yes,
is like
yes,
this
yes.
from. So the question is like this from Ronish M. Mara. Sir, in tribal society there are many intermarriages. I think in the long run time, it may dilute the authenticity of tribal culture. Uh, what you will say on this? This is question from Sir Ronis M. Mara or Professor Falong.
Okay. Okay. First of all, let me uh, just say a few words on the previous questions. You see, actually, every tribal culture, as I said, has its own specificity. But at the same time, each culture is not closed, rather it is dynamic. It can accommodate changes, or it can also borrow certain things from other cultures. But that should not drastically be done in such a way that it will, in the process, uh, cause the very loss of identity of the culture. Because even if we can accommodate change, even if we can take these views from others, but at the same time, the specificity of the culture needs to be maintained. And at the same time, even if a culture has its own specific language, and supposing borrowing some terms from other cultures or from other languages, that is okay. But what I like to emphasize here is that there is no one language for a culture. Each culture can retain its own language, its own specificity, while at the same time adopting certain concepts or certain new things from other cultures. Now, coming to the second question about the diluting of marriages. Obviously, as I've said, culture undergoes changes. Many things also got modified, or maybe sometimes even lost itself. But the values which the meanings which are attached sorry, to these cultural practices will remain intact. And even if the surfaces or the so-called the periphery might undergo changes, but the core, which constitute values, which constitute meanings, I don't think it can be carried away so easily just like that.
Thank you so much, sir, for your reply. Now I hand over the time to Dr. Wanfai.
One more paper.
Before we go
One
to the
more.
last speaker, I would just like to raise one question for Polong. I would just like to take one more question for Sir Polong. Sir, can you hear me?
Okay, okay.
We will just take one more question.
Yes, yes.
Now, what will be the
All
new
right.
what will be the new theoretical framework to examine the religious belief systems of Northeast community other than the concept of animism, naturism, or totemism, etc. This question has been raised by Thomas Malcolm.
Okay. See, now, when I talk about that kind of framework in which non-humans also are included, I mean, I'm not talking about the kind of animism where, you know, we say that yes, for example, this particular tribe, they believe in the so-called spirits or something. But I am talking about that kind of a conceptual framework or that kind of system where you will find that there is a respect, there should be a respect, or there should be room, there should be a, a, a concern for all life forms. You see, even Christianity for them, I mean, if we go deeply into what is written in the Bible also, you find that this kind of respect or this kind of treatment towards non-humans, actually, it is very much emphasized. But I'm very sure that, see, I mean, Christianity, you would not say that it is an animistic religion. So therefore, even if we try to evolve that kind of framework, I mean, obviously, it is we humans who formulate such kind of framework. All right. Hello.
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 Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So therefore, what I'm trying to say is that, you know, that kind of framework that I propose actually is that which is non-anthropocentric in the sense that it takes into account the values, the interests of all other living beings. And this is what we found in most religions. And also this is the framework which is mostly prescribed by environmental ethicists. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much,
Let
sir.
me start, I think, otherwise time is...
Yes, sir. Now I will request the last speaker.
Just for me and then...
Hello.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, please.
Now we move on to the last speaker of today's program. But before that, I would like to give a brief introduction about sir. Dr. Prasenjit Biswas is an associate professor in the Department of Philosophy, Northeastern Hill University, Shillong. He has authored 7 books. He has presented 110 papers in various national and international conferences and seminars. He has also published many articles on phenomenology and continental philosophy, philosophy of science, philosophy of mind, philosophy of tribes of Northeast India. Welcome, sir. Please take over, sir.
Can you hear me?
Hello. So we cannot hear you.
So I thank you. I thank you, Don Bosco College Tura, the principal, Dr. 15 Mary Japan, and all other associated colleagues for organizing this wonderful discussion. Now, I would like to pose a few problems that arise in understanding tribal culture and tribal philosophy of Northeast India. One of the major questions that I pose here is that how is tribal philosophy shall be considered as part of Indian philosophy? Is tribal philosophy of Northeast a part and parcel of Indian philosophy? or Indian philosophy is something that excludes the ideas of specific worldviews that particular tribes have, because it falls outside the 9 schools of Indian philosophy. That is a major question that we need to delve into. Now, Indian philosophy, if we are decolonizing it, we have to actually take it back to the real world and also to the roots of culture. So when I use the word real world, what does reality mean? For tribes of Northeast India, reality is a set of experiential relations. And in the experiential relation, as my worthy colleague Dr. Polong has explained very hard, that it is a non-anthropocentric experiential relationship. It's not really anthropocentric experiential relationship. So the question before the mode of cognitive world of the tribes of Northeast is how to articulate this non-anthropomorphic experiential relations in one's own language, in terms of a speech community, in terms of emoting, telling, narrating, poetizing, expressing in various other dramaturgical forms as well. So how do we translate this experiential relationship of the non-anthropomorphic world into our linguistic practices is a major question. And Professor Ludwig Wittgenstein gives a fascinating answer to this question. And in terms of Professor Wittgenstein's understanding of language game, the tribes of Northeast India, they are entitled to play their own language games. They are entitled to describe their world in their own linguistic terms. Now, when I say own linguistic terms, this doesn't mean merely language, but it also means conceptual framework, as my worthy colleagues, Professor Mao, Professor Manlal, and Professor Basil have already explained. So the conceptual framework that is embedded in language, in terms of which the experiential relations can be translated into linguistic practices, is nothing but playing the language game. How do Northeastern tribes play this language game? Is it in the same way? The way Buddhist will play, the way the Advaitin will play, the way the Naya Vaisheshika will play, the way Sanskritist will play, or is it radically different way of playing the language game? That is the main question that we need to answer. Now, to answer this question, I would like to throw you a few examples. For example, Apatanis believe that they can calculate the reefs of the world. Mark the word, mark my word, reefs of the world, sub lumjum, as they call it in Apatani. Now, reefs of the world are calculated in terms of the ridges, the ridge lines on the sub-Himalayan region, in which the Siang Valley, the Arunachal Pradesh, is located. Now, imagine the topography of the Arunachal Pradesh from the extreme northeastern part of the Siang Valley, which originates from the Himalayas, through which the Siang River, the mighty Siang River, passes by. And it creates a number of topographical features on the hills, which is considered as reefs in Apatani language, the reefs of the world. Now you can see they play their language game in a very different way than the way Naya Vaisheshika would be talking about. Can Naya Vaisheshika talk about reefs of the world? Can Advaitins talk about the reefs of the world? Because body doesn't matter in Advaita philosophy. What matters in Apatani philosophy is the body and the embodied sense of the bodily relations, the experiential relations with the non-body formations, non-anthropomorphic bodies which are lying in the external world and which become part of their dream, part of their conceptual structure. So you can see here a very different kind of a phenomenological understanding of the world. I just expand it a little more. For example, in Advaita Vedanta, we talk about Atman, our soul. Now, you know this contradiction between Advaita Vedanta and Buddhism in terms of Atman and non-Atman. You have an opposite of Atman, which is Anatma, as it is taught by Vasubandhu and various Vaibhashiko and various other Buddhist philosophers. Now you can see this contradiction, the duality between the Atman and the non-Atman. Do tribal philosophies of the Northeast India embed such dualities and contradictions? That's an important question, which is a cut question. Indian philosophy depends on dualities, contradictions, distinctions. Do tribal philosophy depend on such contradictions, distinctions, and dualities? Is an important question. And the answer is very, very important. The answer comes from Nagarjuna. What is the reality of distinctions? Are distinctions real or unreal? I would go with Nagarjuna to call all kinds of distinctions as unreal, because these distinctions are created by a certain conceptual framework, a certain web of beliefs. Now, tribal philosophers do not have to depend on such ontological distinctions. Rather, they would more depend on examining the relationship between two sides of the distinction, or three sides, or many sides of the distinction. In fact, they will go for something like entity pluralism, which will completely do away with such conceptual distinctions in metaphysical terms. Does it mean tribal language doesn't distinguish between a glass and a table? You have a linguistic distinction, but you don't have an experiential distinction, which is expressed in ontological terms in tribal philosophy, is expressed in Naya Vaisheshika, or in Buddhist, or in Advaitin philosophy. Therefore, tribal philosophies of Northeast are radically different. They are both a part of Indian philosophy, as well as they are not a part of Indian philosophy. They are outside Indian philosophy, if you like. Now, being outside Indian philosophy, can tribal philosophies articulate themselves as a separate, distinguishable, eminent systems of philosophy? Is a very, very important question. To my mind, tribal philosophies of Northeast India are by themselves eminent systems of philosophy, and they are equally or more than equally respectable than the larger rubric of Indian philosophy. In fact, the larger rubric of Indian philosophy has to be expanded, it needs to be amended, it needs to be revised in order to include or even exclude tribal philosophy. So therefore, there are two distinct kind of language games happening here. A language game which is ontological, which bases itself on metaphysical distinction, as we see in Indian philosophy, and a language game where there is an experiential connection between various entities to build up an entity pluralism with a linguistic distinction, but that linguistic distinction doesn't act as a basis of an ontological, metaphysical, or phenomenological distinction. So two kinds of language games are separable here, and that is something very, very important. As we say, Indian culture is diverse, it accommodates a variety. So if you really believe that there is diversity and variety and pluralism, the question is, how do we accommodate these radically different systems of thinking as available in Indian philosophy and as available in tribal philosophies of Northeast, lying outside the pale of Indian philosophy? But when I use the word Indians, the tribes of Northeast India are indisputably Indian. But as Nagas say, that we are part of India, but we have a different culture. Now, the difference of culture that the tribes of Northeast India, in terms of their different way of understanding the world, needs to be recognized within the very idea of India. It is moving beyond pluralism and multiculturalism as well. It is moving into the realm of pure differences. Are we ready to entertain this realm of pure differences is an important question to understand how we are going to understand tribal philosophies of Northeast India. Now, before I complete, getting back to another very, very important issue, you can see that in tribal philosophies of Northeast India, because they do not agree with an ontological distinction, therefore, there are very interesting kind of representation of these distinctions. For example, when someone finds that his wife has disappeared into a lake, disappeared into this vast universe, and one is trying to find one's wife back. A tale that Apatanis or Tripuri tribes have had. What does it signify? What Dr. Basil Polong mentioned as deep structures of tribal culture. This is where the deep structure of tribal culture unveils itself. And this unveiling of the deep structure of the tribal culture has to be understood in terms of a variety of motives, a variety of specific expressions. For example, when one talks about Supreme God, let's say Tatar Rabuka in Garo culture, or Monday in Garo culture, or any other name of a supreme god who is available in Balpakram, let's say. So supreme god is lonely. Supreme god is along with the created. Supreme god is also with the non-anthropomorphic beings like rocks and hills. So one supreme god has many different expressions, and these expressions are manifested in tales, a variety of tales with a different set of motives. Now, a lonely creator, who is tired of solitude, therefore inaugurates the creation. How does he inaugurate the creation? A fantastic expression that comes to my mind is something like that a snake runs into a puddle, and by running into a puddle, the snake creates so much of turbulence that a riverbed is created. Now you can understand creation is not an unmediated act by the Supreme God, but creation is a mediated act through a variety of entities, through non-anthropomorphic lives around. And that is how tribal culture can think about creation. If you think about Naga story of creation, the Makhel, an area with 6 rocks, long track, which is also called as Makhel. And from the stones, the human beings, the first earthen life was created. Now look at this kind of a motive. The motive is that of a blissful, non-anthropomorphic world, from where we are created through our bliss, through the experience of bliss. Now, this kind of a metaphor, this kind of a motive is not available in the descriptions of Naya Vaisheshiko or in Advaita philosophy or even in Buddhist philosophy. So what do you do with such description? One has to revise the philosophical systems. And that's a long way to go, a long way to traverse, to understand how we revise, how we refine, how we redescribe our philosophical systems, to bring into picture this kind of non-anthropomorphic expressions that are available among the tribes of Northeast India. Hundreds of expressions can be referred to. I don't want to go into more details, but suffices to say that the specific expressions of a tribe which finds a place in their language and takes the form of a concept, or often non-conceptually describes the world, have to be understood in terms of philosophical framing and philosophical explanation. These explanations will not fit into a stereotypical explanation and a stereotypical framework. Therefore, we are in a strange situation of being inside as well as being outside the philosophy. So something that is outside the philosophy is more important than philosophy itself. One has to start from that point to revise the philosophical system itself. I think with these brief comments, I will stop here. If there are questions, I'll love to answer them because I have a quick meeting. So therefore, let's get into question answer mode. Dr. Wanfai and other organizers, please, you can start the question answer mode. Yes.
Thank you very much, sir, for such an enlightening lecture. Now I request Sir Ferric to take over and put the question to sir. Raise the question to sir. Thank you, sir. Sir Ferric?
Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Prasenjit Biswas, for your wonderful session. Hope so everyone had understood your this topic on the worldview of tribes and communities of Northeast. There is no such questions right now. Now I hand over the time to Dr. Wanfai.
Yeah, I mean, they will just conclude now.
I will
Please
wait for
conclude.
some. No. There are no questions.
No question. Yeah, go ahead, you conclude, please.
This is your first time? So next time we will not try.
Sir, there is one question. Hello? Sir, there is one question.
Sure, please. Yeah.
Is the worldview of Northeast different from the rest of the world? From the West, from the rest of India? So I
No, I
repeat
didn't understand. Read it again.
Is the worldview of Northeast different from the rest of India? Sir, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, certainly 100% difference. Rest of India doesn't eat cow, snake, dog, or insects, but Northeast tribes certainly eat them. Now you can see the difference begins from there. And what is this meaning of having a different eating habit? Different eating habit arises from different conceptual systems, which is entirely different from rest of the mainstream India. So from there you can start off and you can look into the way world is classified, categorized by various northeastern tribes, and you can see here experiential relations of all kinds, which is described linguistically and which becomes part of their language game, which is different from a metaphysical or an ontological classification of things as available in Indian philosophical systems.
No. So we have another question from Miss Indrani from St. Mary's College, from Dr. Indrani Chowdhury.
Yeah, sure.
Dr. Biswas, do you think conventional philosophical systems in India has been necessarily closed?
We cannot really prejudge a convention because a convention arises as a form of practice. It leads to certain beliefs and it creates a web of belief, language, and practices. So if it creates a web, that web has to be noticed. Whether we are able to notice it cognitively, or it is precognitively given, or we experience it as it arises, are very important cognitive questions. In terms of philosophies of Northeast India, they arise in terms of everyday experiential relations. And therefore, it is not precognitively given. And that's where it makes a difference with the precognitively given philosophical systems of India. So right now, this much will be fine, I suppose.
Sir, can we take one more question?
Sure, please.
Sir, this is from Stephen Ralte. He asks, should we promote tribal philosophy and include in our academic syllabus like Indian philosophy? Tribal philosophy is very important, but lack importance in our Indian society and in academic field.
Obviously, just because Indian academics is not yet able to include tribal philosophy, so it is quite impoverished at this moment. We have to come out of this impoverishment, this lack of vitamin in our thinking. The vitamin can come from Northeast Indian tribal philosophers and tribal philosophy. Sooner, Indian academia realizes it is better.
Sir,
right? Yeah.
One more question, sir?
Yeah, it's okay then. 1-5, you can conclude.
Okay, sir. Sir, thank you very much, sir, for such an interesting and informative lecture. Thank you so much, sir. Now I will go to, I will just give a brief summary, a brief overview of the webinar.
He has disappeared.
Yes, sir. I'll just give a brief overview.
Hey, 1-5, don't prolong it now.
Yes, sir. I'll just give a
We will
brief.
move out actually. Huh?
Hello?
Yeah, you can carry on, but we will move out.
Yes, sir. It's okay. No problem.
So we are moving out, all four of us, including Professor Mao, Professor Bilal, Professor Basil, and myself. We thank you very much for including
Thank
us.
you so much, sir. Sir, thank you very much.
Okay, sure.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. Now,
Right.
Okay, thank you very much. We have actually a meeting. That is why we have to leave. Huh? Thank
yes.
you very, very
So
much.
now,
Okay?
like, I would like to invite, I would like to request Madam Priyanki to propose the vote of thanks. Yes. Hello, Madam Priyanki.
Yes, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes.
All right. A very good afternoon to all. As all good things come to an end, so is this webinar. I, on behalf of Philosophy Department, Don Bosco College, Tura, take this opportunity to place on record my profuse gratitude to our esteemed and distinguished speakers who, in spite of their busy schedule, have spared their valuable time to be with us, to enlighten and to enrich us with their excellent presentations and deliberations. Thank you, teachers. I also extend my hearty thanks to the principal, Father Biwan Rodriguez Mukim, and Vice Principal, Father Abilas Vijay, for their constant support and motivation to the department. Further, I would like to express my thanks to the organizing team of the department and to Dr. Wanpai Mary K. Japan, the convener of this webinar, whose dedication have made this webinar an eventful one. I extend my heartfelt gratitude and thanks to all the participants whose presence and enthusiastic participation have made this webinar a grand and a successful one. Last but not the least, I thank Sir Jacqueline Sangma and Sir John Satis for their technical support rendered to us on this webinar. Thank you all once again. Stay safe and take care. And the feedback link will be shared in the chat box. So kindly fill the feedback form. Kindly fill the feedback form and submit your feedback form. Thank you.
Thank, Madam. Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Now, yeah. I was about to give my this valedictory speech, no, but it's too long. But can you hear me? Hello.